it's time for us to hear from our speaker. Mike Bales is fairly new to Central, but I know that he's not new to a number of you. And he's going to share a little bit about his story, some of his influences, and all of the things that have been part of his faith journey. So we're really glad to have Mike with us as part of this congregation, and we're really glad to have him this morning.
I don't walk so well anymore, so I'm going to be sitting on this stool, I think. Well, that's all right. You know, picking up this guy to get myself around. Well, I guess, can everybody still see me? I guess so. Is it on? Can anybody hear me? Anybody hear me? Anybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, it's interesting that Brandon would end his introduction by saying faith journey, because that's exactly the title that I picked out when I started through this process. I suspect many of you have thought about your faith journey over time. And you know, it was fun to do that because I remembered things that I thought forgotten along the way. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today, sort of the how and why did I come to Central Christian Church. I was born in Ironton, Ohio. We lived in Ironton, Pikeville, Kentucky, Stanton, Virginia, and finally, as a sophomore in high school, we moved back to Ashland, Kentucky, or to Ashland, Kentucky. And that was the time when, that better? Okay. All right. That was the time when CYF was a really big thing. And I participated in CYF. My wife and I were co-presidents of the CYF. And we had 40 to 50 kids every Sunday evening get together. That certainly changed from what is the situation today. Went to camp. The first connection that I have to Central occurred during that time in Ashland. I suspect many of you know Ted Faulkner. Ted was the son of our minister in Ashland, Joe Faulkner. That's the first connection to Central. After graduating from high school, I went to Virginia Tech, VPI as it was known in those days, and graduated and had a commission in the Army, a regular Army commission. That ended up about a year later sending me to Vietnam. And while I was in Vietnam, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I got reassigned back to the States to Fort Knox, and so I was with him through those last days of his journey. And after that first time in Knox, I got sent back to Vietnam. And I tried to tell him that I really didn't need to go back. I hadn't left anything, and if I did, they were welcome to it. but I went back.
Just
Feedback. Did you hear the feedback? Yeah.
yes, there.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I got back from Vietnam the second time and was on my way to my new duty assignment, which was Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, and my stepfather died. So that sort of changed my outlook on what I ought to do. I resigned my commission in a year and went back to Fort Knox. And a year later, I was discharged from the Army. Went to work in Cleveland, Ohio for Ashland Oil. At that time, the division I worked in was called Allied Oil. And got involved in Heights Christian Church. Probably the first time I really had gotten directly involved and began to understand a little bit about what faith meant. Second connection to Central Christian Church. Albert Pennybacker was our minister. So he and I go back to the early 1970s. At Heights Christian, it was a time of us having young kids and lots of friends who had young kids. It seemed like there was a dinner at church at least once a month, and the young families were the ones who prepared it. And so we got to be very close to each other, and we still keep up with some of those folks. It's also what I would call the first of my spiritual awakenings. Hello. Suckers on wheels. I'm not, it is. I went for a weekend, or actually I think a long Saturday session, to an event sponsored by the Institute of Cultural Affairs. Look it up online, it's still in existence, and I think its mission may have changed rather dramatically from when I went. But it was the first time that I got exposed on a regular, or on a concentrated basis to the work of Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Reinhold Niebuhr. And those began to make me question what I was doing and why was I doing what I was doing. I remember one phrase that sticks with me even today from that Saturday morning. And that was, somebody made a presentation, he said, faith is like hitting a wall. And you can either back up from it and hit it again, or you can decide that you want to embrace it and go around it and grow from there. And so that I think of even today as one of those real moments in my faith journey. Mainly when I was at Heights Christian, I got involved in church finances and the pulpit search committee and some of that sort of stuff. 1977, Ashland Oil decided that I needed to be in Ashland, Kentucky. And so I moved the family, and we got back to Ashland, bought a house, etc. And I joined First Christian Church. At that time, second connection, Dinsmore Nesbitt was the minister. You all know Joanne Nesbitt, I'm suspecting. And David was about that tall. And so we got to know them reasonably well. Third connection. During that time, Dinsmore decided to take up a call in Texas. And so we had to have a pastoral search committee. I called the regional minister, Guy Walter, another connection. And Guy and I worked quite some time to get that program coalesced and to get a candidate and get all that done. It probably took us, I'm going to guess, 15 to 18 months to make that happen. Fourth connection. The minister was Bob Bradley, that we called him. And over the years, Bob and I remained very good friends until his passing last year. During that time, one of the things we said to the candidates, we're going to build a new church. And I don't mean we're going to build a building and leave the old church. I mean we're going to build a new church and tear the old one to the ground. We did that. If you drive to Ashland, on the main street of Ashland, the church is there and still very nice, very modern. It's an interesting architecture, I will say. Finally, left Ashland Oil. I was in the coal business at this point, and worked for a small company, and then I worked for my own company for a little while. Found out I was killing myself and not making any money, so I decided it was time to go find a real job. Ended up in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I worked for the Ohio River Company, big barge line. And we came and hunted. You would think Cincinnati would be a place where there would be lots of disciples, congregations. Should be lots and lots of different selections. Well, there aren't. In fact, the only one I can think of had about 30 members total. And the rest of them were only there in name and smaller than that. We ended up going to First Christian Church, Covington, Kentucky. And there we stayed until 1987. No, we stayed, that's when we got there, was 1987. While I was there, my job at the Ohio River Company, VP of Sales, was eliminated. So I found myself fired for the first time in my life. And it took me 15 months to find a job using a professional search firm. I had an office in their facility and so forth, and worked every day just like I was at the old office. But I did find that job. But in the meantime, I met a young man who was also looking for work, and he talked me into going to the Walk to Emmaus. I don't know whether any of you all have ever been to the Walk to Emmaus or not. There is an active chapter in Lexington, I found out. And I would say that was my second and largest spiritual awakening. It's a 3-day program. Starts on Thursday evening, you finish on Sunday. No connection to anybody outside, no phones, no nothing. You are focused strictly on faith, God, Jesus, and how all that relates. And it changed my life. During my search process, the thing that I did was every morning I would be up at the little table in the breakfast room, and I would have a Bible open, and I would read scripture and pray. And that's what got me through the 15 months it took me to find a job. So that was, an awakening that I wouldn't have had I not been fired. My job that I found was in Chicago, actually St. Charles, Illinois, which is about 40 miles due west of downtown Chicago. I worked for Commonwealth Edison Company, the big electric utility, and bought transportation and fuel for all the generating stations. We joined a church there. Actually, I went there first because my wife hadn't even moved. The Sunday of the first anniversary of a new church start in Aurora, Illinois. That church is still going today. And that was an interesting opportunity to be a part of a brand new start from the ground church. One of the things that a friend of mine and I did was we wrote the Constitution bylaws. And we said, here they are on a trial basis. We will vote on accepting them. We'll work under them, but we'll work on a trial basis for at least 2 years. And then we'll have a formal congregational vote for acceptance or changing or just starting all over. Good time in Chicago. It's a great city. We spent a lot of time at church, and our church there was in Aurora, and we were in St. Charles. We had a 45-minute one-way drive, and I probably was at that church 3 days a week after work. So it really was a commitment. We actually started services in an elementary school. So everything that went into the church service, all of the furniture, etc., went into a little trailer, about 4 by 6 foot trailer, after the service every Sunday. And every Sunday morning before service, we pulled the little trailer to the front of the church. We carried all that in, and we set that all up, and we had service, and then took it all down, and so forth. Great time, really interesting, and again, a part of seeing my faith from a different perspective. In 2004, I got fired a second time, and that's when we moved to Lexington. I remember the day that it happened, and a friend of mine who I've been doing a fair amount of business with called and he said, "What are you going to do and where are you going to be?" And I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I won't be in Chicago when the winter comes." And that was in like February, and sure enough, we moved here in May of 2004. When we moved here, we joined Crestwood Christian Church. We were there for 18 or 19 years, which raises the big question, why did you come to Central? Very simple. For us, the direction of Crestwood was toward younger families and lots of activities and focus on younger families, and little to no focus on older adults. And we finally reached a point where we said, need something different. And here we are at Crestwood, or here we are at Central. It's been a nice journey. It's been an interesting journey. And we're very happy that we're here at Central. All the connections through all that life have all focused us towards Central, and we finally got here. Thank you very much.